Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ, Diwaan-e-Ghalib, Meri Zubani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 32 from Divan-e-Ghalib, Ghar Hamaara, Jo na Rote bhi to Viiraan Hotaa. We've already covered 2 couplets. Today we are going to get into the third couplet, which is the last couplet of this ghazal. So, today we are going to finish the ghazal. It was a short one with just 3 couplets. As always, I will read the couplet for you first, then we will get into an approximate translation, key words, key concepts, and finally the DGMZ impression. So this is how it goes. Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare. Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare. Kaash Rizwaan Dar-e-Yaar ka Darbaan Hotaa. It's a good one. So let's start with an approximate translation. Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare. After a lifetime of abstinence, finally the outcome would be given. Second line, Kaash Rizwaan Dar-e-Yaar ka Darbaan Hotaa. I wish Rizwaan himself was the doorkeeper of the beloved's door. So that is the approximate translation. Of course, there are a lot of twists and turns in it. The approximate translation cannot simply do justice to those. For that, we will need to get into the impression. Alright, let's start picking our keywords from the couplet. Lot of words, some are simple, some not as much. Let's get that ball rolling. First word, baad. Baad, commonly used word, it means after, something that happens subsequent to something. इस पे अहमद फराज का एक शेर, हुआ है तुझसे बिछड़ने के बाद ये मालूम कि तू नहीं था, तेरे साथ एक दुनिया थी. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is after departing from you, after leaving you, I have realized that it was not just you who was with me, but a whole world used to be with me when you were with me. So that is baad. Moving on to yak-umr. It's a word complex. Yak is one, umr is life. So one life. Sometimes by extension used as the entirety of one life. इस पे मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, यक उम्र दीदा हाय सितम दीदा तर रहे, आखिर को फूट फूट बहे कहर कर रहे. The approximate translation is, for the entirety of that one life, my eyes were drenched by the torture to eyes, which is tears, right? And then finally I broke down and cried, and that was almost at the level of a calamity. Let's move on to vara. Vara is a complex word simply because it has lot of permutation combinations, and it is the first time I think we are encountering it at DGMZ. So vara literally translates to timidity, cowardice, fear of something. So much so that it prevents you from doing that thing. You hesitate in doing that thing. इस पे मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, तुम्हें तो जोद व वारा पर बहुत है अपने गुरूर, खुदा है शेख जी हम भी गुनहगारों का. Lovely couplet. The approximate translation is, you have a lot of pride with reference to your being devout, to you being fearful of the God, but O wise one, always remember, He is as much a God of us sinners as He is of you who is devoted to him, fearful of him, and do all the right things by him. So that takes care of Vara. Moving on to Baar. Now, Baar again can be used in different contexts. One is the result of something, the product of something, sometimes literally the blossoms or fruits of something. It can also be used as a time adjective, right? And then finally, it can be used as a burden, a load, something heavy that you have to bear, bearing the weight of something, right? So multiple usages of Baar. इस पे दाग दहलवी का ये शेर, हंसा हंसा के शबे वस्ल अश्क बार किया, तसल्लियाँ मुझे दे दे के बेकरार किया. Beautiful couplet to capture Dag's typical great style of poetry. So the approximate translation is, again and again by laughing, during the evening of union, she burdened me with tears. Again and again by her laughter during the evening of union, she burdened me with tears. And the more she consoled me, by consoling me again and again, she made me even more restless. So it's a beautiful couplet, right? It's the evening of union. Everything should be happy, but the lover is already dreading the separation after it, right? No matter how much the beloved is trying to placate him or make him feel joyful about the evening, the lover cannot be consoled. All right, so that takes care of Baar. Let's move on to Baare, and of course wordplay, two different words. Baare is one time, right? Finally done one time. It's an interesting word. इस पे मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, बारे दुनिया में रहो, गमज़दा या शाद रहो, ऐसा कुछ करके चलो, यहाँ की बहुत याद रहो. The approximate translation is, once that one-time opportunity of you being in this world, whether you were in it happy or whether you were in it sad, do something which ensures that you are remembered forever, right? That one chance you got to live in the world, whether you lived it happily, whether you lived it sad, just ensure you do something that ensures that you are remembered after you are gone. So that is Baare. Moving on to Rizwaan. Rizwaan is actually the archangel that guards the door to paradise. इस पे अल्लामा इकबाल का ये शेर, कुछ जो समझा मेरे शिकवे को तो रिजवां समझा, मुझको जन्नत से निकाला हुआ इंसान समझा. One of our favorites here at DGMZ. The approximate translation is, if there was one person who could understand my grievance, who could understand my complaint, it was Archangel Rizwaan. Because when I met him at the door of paradise, when I met him at the gates of paradise, he understood that I am not someone who is standing in front of him to enter the paradise. I am someone who has left their paradise behind. It's a beautiful couplet. And of course, by extension, Rizwaan understands the lover is standing at the gates of heaven and missing his paradise down on earth that he has left behind, which was with the beloved, which was near the beloved, in the vicinity of the beloved. हसरत मोहानी का ये शेर, रंज देगी बागे रिजवां की तन आसानी मुझे, याद आएगा तेरा लुत्फ़ सितम रानी मुझे. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, when I'm in the garden of paradise, I will be very saddened by the comfort, the ease, the relaxation, the pleasures my body will feel in that garden. Because, beloved, sitting there all relaxed and easy and comfortable in pleasure, I will keep missing the joys of the tortures that you gave to my body. I will miss those. That is what I want. I do not want these pleasures and joys of paradise. So that takes care of Rizwaan. Moving on to Dar-e-Yaar. It's a word complex. Dar is door, Yaar is beloved. Door of the beloved. इस पे वाजिद अली शाह अख्तर का ये शेर, बर्बाद ना कर उसको जरा हाथ पे धर ला, ए बादे सबा खा के दरे यार इधर ला. What a lovely couplet, right? So the approximate translation is, do not waste it. Come and put it on the palms of my hand. O zephyr, O breeze, that dust that you carry from the door, from the threshold of my lover, of my beloved, come and put it on my hand. Don't waste it away. Don't just blow it away here and there. Bring it and put it on my hand. And then the last word, Darbaan. So Darbaan is a doorkeeper, a guard at the door, sentry at the door, right? इस पे अमीर इमाम का ये शेर, दरबा बन के सर को झुकाए खड़ी है अकल, दरबारे दिल की जिसका शहंशाह इश्क है. Beautiful visualization, right? The approximate translation is, like the doorkeeper, like the guard of the door, with his head bowed down, stands my wisdom. Stands my wisdom in the court of the heart, a court which is ruled by love. So the wisdom, the brain, the intellect, the analysis is standing with their head bowed down. Because this is not a court where the brain rules. This is the court where the heart rules. And love is the king of this court. Alright, so that takes care of all the keywords. Lot of them, but hopefully the tricky ones will now make sense when we pick them up for the impression. Let's start getting into the DGMZ impression. First line, Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare. We are going to split this into two parts and take it one at a time. So the first half of the first line, Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara. Baad is after, Yak-Umr is one lifetime. By extension, one entire lifetime. Now Vara, when we were doing the keywords, we told you that it literally translates into timidity, fear, cowardice, right? But the beauty of the word lies in the fact when Vara is used with reference to God, to faith, to divinity, it gets transformed into a virtue. So, worried and hesitating and timid in doing something wrong, in sinning. Self-discipline and abstinence from things which are not godly. Fear of God. Self-restraint, self-denial from things again that are ungodly. So Vara, when coupled with God, becomes a virtue. Right? Literally it is fear and timidity, but when coupled with God, it becomes a virtue. Vara, in its divine meaning, captures all the virtues of a God-fearing, God-abiding person. Now this divine meaning of Vara brought to mind a famous proverb from Bible. It is Proverb 9 verses 10, which says, fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The meaning of this verse is referring to this reverential awe and respect for God, which becomes a sound foundation for true wisdom. Here, the fear is not about terror, right? But it is about a deep respect for God's holiness and a knowledge of divine consequences which will help people to avoid sin and live in a way that leads to good judgment and understanding. And that is exactly what Vara in today's couplet means. So, in this first part, Ghalib is saying that after completing an entire lifetime of living, fearing, and obeying God, and practicing self-discipline against all ungodly things. Let's move to the second part of the first line. Baar to Detaa Baare. Like we said, Baar it has lot of meanings, but in today's couplet, Baar is describing the product of something, the fruit of something, the result of something, the outcome of something, right? And then Baare is, like we said, finally, one-time thing that is done. At last, something is finally done for once. Baare is again a very strong word. It has a finality to it, usually a finality that comes after a long wait. This is actually one of Ghalib's favorite ways of highlighting the eternal waiting before the much awaited final occurrence. उनका ये शेर, कत्ल का मेरे किया है अहद तो बारे, वाय अगर अहद उस्तवार नहीं है. So the approximate translation is, she has made a pledge, she has made a vow to kill me, slay me, finally. But alas, what if her vow is not firm? What if she does not fulfill her vow? In this couplet, Ghalib uses Baare for a final outcome at the beloved's end. But in today's couplet, of course, he is using it for an outcome at the lover's end. Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare. Ghalib states, after this one lifetime spent entirely leading a virtuous, pious, God-fearing life, the result would finally be given to me. I would receive the outcome finally. So that is the first line. Let's move on to the second line. Kaash Rizwaan hi Dar-e-Yaar ka Darbaan hota. I wish it was Rizwaan himself who was the guard of the beloved's door. The second line is where this couplet starts emerging in all its glory, because Ghalib finally, in true Mushaira style, will give us the baseline for the comparison. The key to the second line, and in fact for the whole couplet, lies in Rizwaan. You can call it the key, you can call it the centerpiece, you can call it the beauty of the couplet, right? But introducing Rizwaan in this couplet is where the magic is. So before we get into our impression of the second line, let us set up some background context to Rizwaan. Now, Rizwaan is an angel in Islam who is responsible for maintaining and guarding Jannah, which is also known as the paradise or garden of paradise. Rizwaan is often contrasted with the angel Malik, who is the gatekeeper of hell, Jahannam. Both in Urdu poetry and Islamic literature, there are many stories that highlight the critical role of Rizwaan. Rizwaan guards the gate of Jannah, which is paradise, ensuring that only those who are destined for it can enter through it. Rizwaan and the angels under his command welcome believers into paradise as they arrive. Rizwaan's attitude towards believers is gentle and friendly as he lets them enter the gates of paradise. Rizwaan is an archangel in Islam, tasked with the management and maintenance of paradise, and leads the angels who are its keepers. Rizwaan, hence, as the leader of all the keepers of paradise, is also known as Khazin-ul-Jannah, Now, Rizwa is very gentle and friendly to the deserving soul, but he is also equally strict and forbidding to the undeserving souls who would want to enter Jannah or paradise unfairly. Rizwa uses his power at the gates of Jannah to prevent entry of undeserving souls into the heavenly paradise. Convincing Rizwa of one's eligibility to enter Jannah is not an easy task. It takes a lifetime of effort, repentance, and self-discipline to live a life virtuous enough that it would ensure admission of your soul by Rizwa at the gates of heaven. Simply put, passing through Rizwa to get entry into the gates of heavenly paradise is probably the most difficult task, the most difficult entry through a door one will ever experience. Now, there is one incident in particular which highlights how difficult and impossible it is to pass Rizwa and enter the gates he guards. As the story goes, Iblis is the leader of the devils or shaitan in Islam, known for his ultimate act of disobedience against God. Prior to the creation of Adam, Iblis was a pious and devoted entity in the heavens, described by some as a leader among the jinn, a class of supernatural creatures made of smokeless fire. When God created Adam from clay, he commanded all the angels to prostrate before his new creation. All the angels obeyed, but Iblis refused. Iblis's refusal was born of pride. He saw himself as a superior to Adam, arguing, "I am better than him. You created me from fire and created him from clay." For this arrogance and disobedience, God banished Iblis from heaven and condemned him to hell. Iblis then made a request, which God granted, to be given respite until the day of judgment. Iblis vowed to himself to use this time to mislead mankind and prove that humans were not worthy of God's favor. Now, the interaction between Iblis and Rizwa is not mentioned in the Quran, but is a narrative in the stories of the prophets. Iblis, in his effort to fulfill his vow to mislead mankind, needed to seek a way back into the Garden of Eden to tempt Adam and Eve. Now, Rizwaan, being the archangel entrusted with the protection and maintenance of Jannah, always stopped Iblis when he tried to enter paradise. Rizwaan blocked Iblis's entry to paradise. It is said, Iblis then enlisted the help of a serpent, promising it eternal life if it helped him deceive Rizwaan to enter into the Garden of Paradise. The serpent agreed and concealed Iblis in his mouth. The serpent then carried Iblis past the guardian angel Rizwaan, who was unaware of the deception. It said, from inside the serpent, Iblis was able to speak to Adam and Eve and tempt them to eat from the forbidden tree. Now, all that background to emphasize the fact that the criteria was very strict. The eligibility was very strict for Rizwaan to grant anyone entry through the door of Jannah, the heavenly paradise. Now, In this second line, we see Ghalib wish that Rizwaan himself was the guard, was the doorkeeper to the beloved's door, rather than whoever actually is the doorkeeper to the beloved's door. The multiple engaging parallels Ghalib has introduced by making this wish of having Rizwaan as beloved's doorkeeper are beyond compare. And they are what elevate this couplet to a league of its own. Ghalib is wishing for Rizwaan, and by extension Rizwaan's strict criteria of entry, to get applied to the beloved's door. Why? Why? Why would Ghalib wish for such a strict doorkeeper and such a strict criteria to be applied to the beloved's door? Normal human beloved behind a normal door of her house with a normal human doorkeeper guarding that door. Why on earth would Ghalib want to change that? Why would Ghalib want to replace it with something as difficult as Rizwaan himself? That's the million-dollar question. And the answer to that question lies in the fact that this door, this threshold, is no ordinary door or threshold for the lover. For the lover, this is the door and threshold of the beloved's house. The most important, the most coveted, and in fact, the only door which is worth entering for the lover. सिमाब अकबराबादी का ये शेर, होना है जो हस्ती को मेरी खाक ही सिमाब, पहले से ही क्यों खाके दर-ए-यार ना हो जाए. The approximate translation is, if it is destined that finally my existence, Simab, and the poet is referring to himself, is going to turn to dust, then why don't I proactively, from the beginning itself, become the dust that lies on the door of the beloved? If that's the ultimate end for me, turning into dust, then why not start that way? Start as dust itself, but not any dust. The dust which lies on the door, on the threshold of the beloved. शकील बदायूं का ये शेर, रखी हुई है संगे दर-ए-यार पर जबीं, इस इज्ज पर गुरूर किए जा रहा हूँ मैं. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, I have placed my forehead on the stone of the door, of the threshold of the beloved. And in this humble act of mine, I am feeling such pride. This humbleness of mine is something I am very, very proud of. What a beautiful couplet, right? फना बुलंद शहरी का ये शेर, ये उम्र गुजर जाए मगर होश ना आए, सर शौक़े इबादत में दर-ए-यार पे खम है. The approximate translation is, let this life pass by and I should not come back to my senses ever again, because right now I am bowed with my head touching the threshold, the doorstep of the beloved. And then फानी बदायूं का ये लास्ट शेर, सजदा कहते हैं दर-ए-यार पे मर जाने को, किबला वो सर है जो खाके राहे जाना हो जाए. So the approximate translation is, the bowing in worship, right? The bowing down in worship is actually dying at the threshold of the beloved. That is what bowing down in worship actually is. And Qibla, which is the religious, which is the direction towards the religious destination of Maqta, for the lover, Qibla is when the head of the lover turns into dust on the path the beloved travels. So, like I said, this is no ordinary door, this is no ordinary threshold, this is no ordinary doorstep. This is where the lover would like to be forever and ever. If not as human, they would like to be mere dust on this threshold and doorstep, but they would just want to be part of this threshold, part of this doorstep. Now, between the lover and his most cherished doorstep or threshold of the beloved lies one big obstacle. Right? And that obstacle is the doorkeeper, is the guard who is at the door of the beloved's house. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का एक बहुत प्यारा शेर, दिल ही तो है सियासत दरबार से डर गया मैं और जाऊं दर से तेरे बिन सदा किए. What a lovely couplet. Approximate translation is, after all, it is just a heart. It got scared by the authority and fear of punishment your doorkeeper sent towards me. Otherwise, me and passing your door without calling out to you, never possible. But it's just a heart. It got scared. It got afraid. So I did pass my favorite door without calling out to you. For the lover, it's critical that this doorkeeper allows him entry. And for this, the lover would do all possible efforts to win over the doorkeeper. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ही एक और शेर, दे वो जिस कदर जिल्लत हम हंसी में टालेंगे, बारे आशना निकला उनका पासबां अपना. So the approximate translation is, no matter to what extent he abuses or humiliates or tortures me, I will let it pass, I will let it go in laughter. Finally, I will have this doorkeeper convert into a friend of mine, into somebody who is in my camp rather than against me. मिर्ज़ा गालिब का ही एक और शेर, फिर जी में है कि दर पे किसी के पड़े रहें, सर ज़ेर बारे मिन्नते दरबां किए हुए. The approximate translation is, today again I have this strong feeling that I should go and remain lying at someone's doorstep, by extension at the doorstep of the beloved, with my head placed under the weight of the favor and the kindness of the doorkeeper. I just feel like going back to her doorstep and putting my head down there and feeling the weight of the favor and kindness of the doorkeeper. By extension, wait till the doorkeeper is kind and favorable enough to open the door for me. And then this last one, again Mirza Ghalib ka sher. Can you see how the scenario is so close to his heart? So, वाह गया भी मैं तो उनकी गलियों का क्या जवाब, याद थी जितनी दुआएं सरफ़े दरबां हो गई. So the approximate translation is, even if I was to go back into her streets, such are those streets. Such are those streets that whatever prayers, whatever requests, whatever pleas I knew, I used them on the doorkeeper himself. I mean, of course, these prayers and requests and pleas would have been best used for the beloved, right? Making a request to her. But such are those streets that whatever I had in my arsenal in terms of prayers and requests, I used them up all on the doorkeeper himself. So, this is no ordinary door. This is no ordinary doorkeeper. And this is no ordinary entry that the lover seeks, because this is, after all, the beloved's house that we are talking about. Ghalib, in his unique style, highlights to us how difficult, how impossible it is for him as a lover to be allowed entry into the beloved's house. The entry is so difficult that it makes Ghalib, the lover, wish that he was not facing the beloved's doorkeeper, but facing Archangel Rizwaan himself as beloved's doorkeeper. Because if it was Rizwaan guarding the beloved's door, Ghalib as a lover is confident he would get entry. Now, why is he so confident? Well, because Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare. After a lifetime of abstinence and temperance, the result would finally be given to me. The outcome, the fruit, would finally be given to me. Angel Rizwaan, true to his nature, would be just and fair and reward Ghalib finally for his abstinence, temperance, and virtuousness of faithfully loving and worshipping the beloved. Convincing Rizwaan, the divine angel, would not be difficult for the true, pure-hearted lover. The challenge that the lover faces is in convincing the human doorkeeper, who, of course, is not fair to the lover's efforts, his pure emotions, and his pure love. So, that brings us to the end of second line, Kaash Rizwaan hi Dar-e-Yaar ka Darbaan hota. If only Rizwaan himself was the doorkeeper of the beloved's door. Now, as always, let's take a few minutes to step back and look at the couplet in totality. If you have been a DGMZ viewer, you know that many times we mention a very unique quality of Ghalib. And this quality is with reference to baselining. Now, baseline, simply put, is the lowest bar, the lowest entry level requirements for anything. At DGMZ, we always say that where normally the highest limit for something would exist, Ghalib will place his baseline there. So, something which is the highest, the most extreme for everybody else, is the lowest entry level place for Ghalib. And then he is going to build on it. The same happens in today's couplet. Getting permission from Rizwaan for entry into gates of heaven, this is the highest level, the most extreme that any human soul can experience. To achieve this, a soul would need a lifetime of effort and good virtue. Ghalib picks this extreme level of hardship and effort and creates a baseline for what he is going to do to get entry into the beloved's door. Ghalib, in his wish for Rizwaan, shows how easy he finds convincing Rizwaan when compared to convincing the beloved's doorkeeper. He would rather convince Rizwaan than have to convince the beloved's doorkeeper. Ghalib certainly is not the only poet who writes about the lover's extreme desire to gain access through the beloved's door. Again, Ghalib is not the only poet who writes about the hard time the doorkeeper is always giving to the lover restricting their entry, preventing their entry. But Ghalib certainly is one of his kind to elevate this scenario to another level by wishing for Rizwaan as the beloved's doorkeeper. Kaash Rizwaan hi Dar-e-Yaar ka Darbaan hota. Multiple messages sent by Ghalib by introducing Rizwaan into this couplet. Number 1. Suddenly the beloved, her door, her doorkeeper, everything takes on a bigger than life importance. An elevation of the beloved and her house and her door to a level where Rizwaan himself will stand guard, will protect the door. Secondly, we get to see the quantification of how difficult, how humanly impossible it is for the lover to get access to the beloved on this earth. So much so that the lover is wishing, oh my God, I wish Rizwaan was the doorkeeper. It would have been easy to get into the door if it was Rizwaan. Number 3, saying that Ghalib can convince Rizwaan very easily also speaks to the pious, pure nature of the lover. Because Rizwaan is an archangel. Rizwaan is fair and square. Rizwaan welcomes. Rizwaan appreciates. Rizwaan allows people who are true, who are walking the path of purity, virtue, etc. And lover does walk this path in his love for the beloved. So the lover is very convinced about a spotless, virtuous track record in his devotion, love and worship of the beloved. So he thinks that lover thinks he's not going to have any problem with Rizwaan. Rizwaan will welcome him like a pure, loving soul. And then last but not the least, once again, Ghalib shows us the superhuman power of the lover who finds convincing an archangel as strict as Rizwaan an easy task. This is Ghalib's way of saying that the path a lover walks is much more difficult than any path anyone would ever walk in their entire lifetime, including the path to the gates of heaven. What a lover faces on his path for love is much, much difficult, much more difficult than what anybody would face on the path to heaven, which itself is the most difficult path. And that is where Ghalib's baseline starts, where everybody's extreme limit ends. Alright, so that takes care of Baad Yak-Umr-e-Vara Baar to Detaa Baare, Kaash Rizwaan hi Dar-e-Yaar ka Darbaan hota. Ghalib wishes for a fair and square doorkeeper like Rizwaan, who would give him credit for an entire lifetime the lover has spent being virtuous, being fearful, being disciplined, being loyal, being pure towards the beloved. Ghalib wishes it was Rizwaan standing on the door because he's sure Baar to Detaa Baare, the outcome would have been given to him finally if Rizwaan was at the door. Alright, that takes care of not only this couplet but this Ghazal. What that means is next time we get to start a new Ghazal, Ghazal 33 from Divan-e-Ghalib. Now we will be very keen to know your impression, your feedback, your comments on not only today's couplet but the entire Ghazal that we covered for you. So do interact with us via the comment feature. For our new viewers, as always, a very strong recommendation to access the episode titled Introduction to DGMZ, because that is going to give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. For our regular viewers, whenever you get time, go to the homepage of the channel, surf it, lot of playlists segregated by topics, ghazals, etc. Pick an episode that interests you. If you have not joined us on Facebook, do join us on the DGMZ Facebook page. We would love to have you there, love to have you interact with us there. We post pretty regularly on the Facebook page, and I think you will enjoy those posts if you join us there. Now, allow me to go ahead and end this episode by sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.